Mr. Boakye Agyarko, welcome to the big interview.
Thank you.
We wanted you to tell us more about your ambition, why you want to contest, the motivation behind your flag bearership.
Well, thank you very much for granting me this opportunity. I have always been a political animal or in politics. I formally joined this tradition, the UP tradition, in 1978 as one of the student leaders of the Popular Front Party on university campus at Legon. And therefore, taking after the steps of my father, who was also a politician, I engrossed myself very deeply in the politics of this country. The simple reason for seeking the leadership of my party and this country is zeal for the service of country and party, and my deep concern for the developmental issues of the Ghanaian. These have been my driving motivation. I have been blessed with certain things, certain backgrounds that I think make these possible. First, I was blessed with a set of parents whose interest it was that we develop ourselves and serve mankind. The two lessons I learned from these parents, Boakye Agyarko and Jane Lajapadi, were that I must learn something new every day, and I must do something every day to help other people. Do something, however small, to help other people on a daily basis. These are the two fundamental principles upon which I ground my daily lives. So service to country, service to party. You know, there are two kinds of people who want to serve. Those who want to be and those who want to do. Those who want to be simply want to enjoy the trappings of power and the goodies that comes with being in power. Okay. They do not see leadership as a covenant between the leader and the led, and that there are certain things that are expected of a leader that he must, as part of the covenant, deliver. So they are there, those who want to be are there to be. Then there are those who want to do. And I want to be counted amongst those who want to do. Those who want to do seek political office or leadership in order to secure the material benefits of those he's leading. That is, bring into being policies and programs that will lift the well-being of citizens and make them a better people. Such people, as I classify myself, see this as an unwavering covenant that all of us as leaders must abide by. Okay. So for me, the presidency of the country becomes the pulpit from which one can stand unconflicted and deliver of a covenant of leadership vis-a-vis the led. So for me, these are the fundamentals.
So one will ask, what new thing are you bringing on board?
New thing are you bringing on board? There are a lot of things that are already on board. You see, this country has moved in fits and starts. We all complain about abundant projects and abundant programs. One government starts something, Another government comes in, is stopped. So it's always fits and starts. Bring at this material moment when we are in financial difficulties as a nation. It is, the first question is not bringing, what are you bringing new? The important thing is that what are all those things that need to be done and completed in order for the country to derive the material benefits from? Go around the country. When I was Minister of Energy, as you go around the country, you will see abundant equipment, wires, poles, abundant in the bush. Meanwhile, there are other places that need those things in order to complete their electrification programs. So for me, the first thing is bringing to fruition all those things that have been abundant and could be brought to bear on the development process of the country. The second thing in terms of governance is transparency. We need to bring a new and a higher level of transparency in our governance for the led or the citizens to feel that they know exactly what is going on. Look, in this country and in most places, we fail to respond to policies not because we do not have the will, but it is that the political class, and I'm not talking about any particular political party, the political class in general have failed to put all the difficult issues squarely before the people in order for them to make the decisions. It is because somehow we do not have either the confidence in ourselves or the confidence in our citizens that they will follow our lead when the path is difficult. So we have not laid these matters clearly, transparently, and faithfully before our citizens for them to make their decisions. So transparency is going to be a very important key in governance. The other thing is discipline. No country, no organization, no household can move forward and develop in an environment of indiscipline. Not misconduct, not just misconduct or misbehavior, but I'm talking of the focus and the toughness of mind to say that this is the path we must tread in order to move forward. And with a single focus and toughness and tenacity of purpose, follow that path of development or that path of policy choices. So discipline is going to be very important as we go forward. Of course, there are other things that, from an ideological perspective of right of center politics where we stand, there are going to be new things. But those new things must be underpinned by the particular needs of our citizens at a given time. What I therefore intend to do is to stay tuned and say, these are the material needs of our people, and therefore at that given time, that is when you craft a policy to respond to the need. To sit 5-6 years away and say that I will bring this or bring that, it's a premature question or a premature proposition. If you say that I'll bring X, and 5 years down the line when you are in power, the necessities for X are no longer present, what have you done? So for me, leadership is about staying guided and tuned to the material needs and conditions of a people, and at every particular and material time, being able to come up with the appropriate policies and programs to address those needs.
How do you assess your chances in the Superdelegate Congress?
you see, the idea of the super delegates conference was to whittle down the number of contestants to a maximum of 5. Straight answer to your question is that I am very confident that I'll be in the group of 5. Very, very confident, God willing. But one has to step back and look at the whole concept of super delegates conference. And I think that at the appropriate time, after this one, we ought to take a very careful look at what gave rise to it, its necessity, its impact on the cohesion of the party and all of that, and review that position. But to answer your question, I'm absolutely sure that I'll be in the 5.
We are in the 17th time going to the IMF. What can we do to end it so that we don't go back to IMF for any support again?
Well, going to IMF is not necessarily a bad thing. The purpose of IMF is to help you adjust to certain temporary imbalances that one may face in an economy. See, when you are in the IMF under Article 4, it means that you have a recognition that your fiscal and financial policies can impact other countries in a contagion. So there are certain guidelines and things you ought to do to constrain yourself from creating a global problem. Of course, Ghana is so small, when we sneeze, nobody catches cold. But be that as it may, you have to ask yourself, why have we been through this revolving door 17 times? It is simply because the problem we face is not a frictional problem or a temporary dislocation or disequilibrium. It is a fundamental disequilibrium in our economy. And we have sort of failed to address that or come to terms in addressing that. Let me go back and read for you what a study done for our country in 1952 diagnosed and recommended. Okay. It comes from a book, Development and Debt Trap, Economic Planning and External Borrowing in Ghana by Andrzej Krasowski. And this is what it says. The report was prepared by 2 consultants, Dudley CS and Ross, in 1952. It says, CS and Ross had already prepared the grounds by arguing that Ghana's problem of instability and recurring inflation could be tackled by a planned diversification of exports away from cocoa and by restructuring, that is, engineering a closer balance between the structure of domestic output and domestic demand. Mm-hmm. Page 20 of the book. Now, what does it mean? It simply means that on the revenue side, Ghana's revenue, we are depending on just cocoa and a few other resources to bring in the revenue, money for us to spend. These products, primary products, have very volatile prices, and therefore your revenues are bound to be volatile. On the demand side, most of the things we consume are imported. 80% of our national output depends on input from abroad. That means you have a very high import bill and a very low revenue stream from exports. So there is always an imbalance between your revenue and your expenditures on the external side as well as the domestic side. This is what Dudley Sears and Ross are telling us 52, that we have to do everything to change the revenue structure as well as our import structure. On the revenue structure, what do we need to do? One is look at the sources of Ghana's revenue. It's largely direct taxes. Those who fall in the catchment bracket of direct taxes are few. On the average, West Africa, instead of having about 16-17% of revenue coming from direct taxation, we are about 10%. Right? So we are not deriving sufficient revenue from our source of revenue. Then one has to go back and say, look at the taxation system. Is the net catching enough people, the net wide enough to rope in enough people? Are there leakages in the revenue? And of course, there are huge leakages in our revenue stream. Leakages such as tax exemptions that government grants to certain class of importers. This is over $1 billion. Luckily, we now have additional sources of revenue apart from cocoa, oil. If you ask me, it is not going well in the oil industry. What we should get out of oil, we are not getting. Two things, for example. When I became minister, I realized that there was a long outstanding tax issue with tallow and ENI. To date, they have not paid. Since 2014, Ghana is entitled to what is called the additional oil entitlement from the oil companies. To date, we have not been given those entitlements. We are negotiating back and forth like we are dancing agbaja. So you have billions out there that could come to us, yet we are not able to collect. All of those things are gaping holes that this country is suffering from. You go to gold, and it stinks. We say that we are exporting $2.8 billion of gold to the rest of the world, particularly Dubai. They say they are importing almost 6 billion. So what's the difference? We say we are exporting 2.8. They say we are importing 6 billion, almost 6 billion. So it means that there's a huge leakage of about $3 billion of gold that could come to Ghana but ending someplace else. So in the extractive industry, we are not doing well for our benefit. Right now, we just found lithium. And Awoya and Piedmont have jumped in. Of course, we are the fourth largest source of lithium in Africa. The biggest is Congo DR. They have 3 million metric tons reserves. We have 180,000 metric tons. That will last us 12 years. But it is of such high quality and price. Now, guess what? Now, Piedmont is saying that from 2025, when mining starts, mine it and we will send it to our factory in Tennessee. We will export the raw to Tennessee to finish the processing there. So value added is transferred to the US. Okay. Why can't it be that, look, we found the lithium here. Let us process it here. Whatever you want to do with it, let's do it here. And we give you the end product of the manufacturing cycle. Botswana has just found lithium as well. The person who runs it is a Ghanaian. And their attitude They were doing it with South Koreans, Samsung and so. So, okay, you're going to manufacture batteries. Come to Botswana and manufacture the batteries here and export the batteries from Botswana as a product of Botswana. Mexico have found lithium. They have defined it as a national strategic asset, which puts it in a different category of exploitation. So we are not doing well on those sides. Now, when you come to the expenditure side, for a country such as ours to import about 80% of its intermediate input into the manufacturing process, you know that you are going to be in difficulty. You are going to be subjected to the fluctuations of your currency and such fluctuations in inflation in the countries you are importing from. So there you are. It's not helping us. But what kills us is that a lot of the things we import, we could do here. We could manufacture here. We have not put our minds to this. I always make this argument. We import about $600 million worth of rice from Thailand, Vietnam, and what have you. The quantity of rice we import, we could produce in Ghana, particularly in the Fumbisi Valley. From Fumbisi all the way to Seoul. Years ago, there used to be a problem with checha fly. Now, through the World Health Organization and FAO, the checha infestation in the Fumbisi Valley has been cleared. What prevents us from telling the big rice importers, rice masters, so look, talk to your principals in Vietnam and tell them that they should come and partner you in Ghana to produce the rice here in Ghana. We'll give them the incentives to do that. So that instead of importing from Vietnam, the rice importer and your Vietnamese partner are now here producing rice. It has a lot of add-ons to the economy. So we have to critically think through what are the things we need to do for ourselves rather than import. Years ago, when 52, when this report was being done, anybody could go to the General Post Office and order chocolate from England. Are we mad? To date, if you look at the things we import from China and the rest, the toys and so on, you ask yourself, are we all children to be playing with toys? So we are remiss in terms of what our needs are. The second final point I will make on this is that we have to look ourselves in the mirror and be honest with ourselves. Look at our national budget. The architecture of our national budget is fundamentally flawed. And by this I mean, since 1961 to date, there are only 3 or 4 years where we've operated surpluses in our budgets. All these years. We claim a certain revenue that we know is not true. That revenue will never come in. So we say we will get 300 million of revenue, when in fact, the trend and historical averages are telling us that we can only get 100 million. Then we say that we will spend only 100 million on all the things that we need to spend on, when in actual fact, our historical averages are telling us that you are going to spend 300 million. So we are lying to ourselves in the budget. That is how come every year on, year out, these things are happening. So what do? I think that we ought to engage ourselves as a people and say, let us correct this imbalance. Forget what's happened in the past. If it means that our deficit, true deficit, is going to be 20%, let's admit it, bite the bullet. It has consequences on interest rates and so on and so forth. But gradually, we can begin to correct those systemic imbalances that creates the disequilibrium for us. We can never solve this problem with IMF. This is the IMF report right here. I don't see any solution to our fundamental structural problem in any of the 65 paragraphs. None. We are jubilating that 600 million has come in and it has opened the door for us to go back to the international capital market. To do what? Borrow some more. You cannot live your private life or your national life on borrowing, right? If it's a temporary situation, yes. But if it's a fundamental situation, no. We have to look at the structure of the disequilibrium and say that, yes, this is what it's going to take. It's going to be tough, but that is where it calls for leadership. We need a national leadership that is going to be honest and transparent with the Ghanaian and say that these are the difficulties we have to go through in order to adjust. And that we are all going to share and bear this pain. Okay. If you make it appear that somebody else, other than government and government officials, are going to bear the pain, they won't come along with you. So we need to bring the nation along through this difficult journey in order to correct the disequilibrium over a period of 5 to 7 years and come into a stability. That is the only way you are going to stop this revolving door. But I can tell you, this in and out of IMF is neither sustainable or desirable. And we have to stop it. We stop it by making very difficult choices as a nation in order to correct the disequilibrium.
Okay. And what are the choices that you are talking about here?
The choices are many. One is to cut our expenditures, especially government expenditures. The cost of running government is just too huge. I mean, I'm not even talking about the number of appointees. Well, a minister earns 17,000 a month, and if you cut 10 ministers out, how much have you saved? Not much in terms of the imbalance. But the cost of running government, in terms of vehicles, in terms of size of government, in terms of what we spend. Let a government delegation go abroad. And if you are not careful, it's a plane load. Right? If you are not careful, it's a plane load. All those things that make running government expensive, we all have to take a look at and bring it. It is when you've done that, that you can tell the ordinary man in the street that you also have to make certain adjustments. Otherwise, the mentality now and the thinking now is that mona mwaboka edi ekaba wa uchedi yeno omune chetua. Those who chop the money should empty their pockets and pay. That's the mentality, prevailing mentality. So you are not getting the cooperation. Look at this debt exchange you've gone through. It's always a painful process. And in fact, in Greece, when Alexis Tsipras tried it, he was ousted from office as prime minister. It's a very difficult process, but it has been successful in a lot of places because of the openness with which it was done and also the thoroughness with which it was done. Citizens believed that it was an absolute necessity for their country. Here, citizens don't believe it, that it's an absolute necessity for this country. A lot of people don't even understand what it is or what we are going through, and therefore what sacrifices they ought to make. So look at debt restructuring. It's gone on. Domestic foreign debt restructuring is hanging. Debt exchange program which underpins the domestic debt restructuring has had all kinds of problems. Simply, one, I think because of communication, and two, because of the technical arrangements around it. We did phase one, brought all kinds of noise into the system. Now we are being told we have to do phase two again. But we are supposed to restructure 11.6 billion, and the phase two is going to restructure about 2 billion. So what happens to the balance? Are we going to do phase three? It has to be laid down so that all citizens clearly understand the contribution they have to make, the sacrifices they have to make in order for this to succeed, so that the nation succeeds. To me, the communication and the processing has been poor. And that is how come it's back and forth, it's swinging left and right. We get $600 million a nation, and suddenly we are jubilating. What are others going to think about us?
Has the government done well with this new bailout, IMF bailout?
If you ask me, my honest answer, and it's not political, my honest answer is we could have done better. But we found ourselves locked in a situation that we didn't have to be. We should have done this much earlier than we did, so that our position would not have deteriorated to where we found ourselves. Look, if you think you have a disease and you are in self-denial that you don't have this disease, and you delay treatment, you're hurting yourself. I think that, like I said, none of the 65 paragraphs addresses the fundamental, I'm not talking of the surface issues, the core fundamental issues that this nation is facing, and which therefore sends us in the revolving door of the IMF. I don't see any in there. So it is a palliative, it is a short-term solution that has come to us. Over and beyond this, we ourselves need to do more. We ourselves need to impose a certain discipline on us on revenue and expenditures in order to gradually close the gap, this disequilibrium gap, so that we can self-sustain. I haven't seen any nation survive and grow on borrowing. Borrowing especially to eat. No. If you borrow to develop certain things that will give you future revenue, that's business practice, complete business sense. But borrow to eat, no.
For more news, please visit our website graphic.com.gh, or follow us on Facebook at Daily Graphic, and on YouTube and Twitter at GraphicGH.
Subscribe now.